Hi everyone, and welcome to this Year 10 information event presentation about preparing for exams. It doesn't seem that long ago that I was recording a video for you about choosing the options for the pupils. I'm really sorry that once again this has to be done online rather than you being face to face, but hopefully we'll be able to get you in school soon for events as things return back to normal. The pupils have obviously just finished a round of mock examinations, but this is about preparing for their exams moving forward and what they've got to come later in the year and their real exams, their real GCSEs next summer, which again will come around really, really quickly. So you might remember this diagram from when we did do the options evening, and we were at that point in spring 1 of year 9 where we were halfway through and we had 15 terms left, 15 half terms left to go. And now our ticks have moved on a little bit further. We're now at spring 1 in year 10 and half term is almost upon us. So when we come back after half term, there are only really 7 half terms left before those important exams start, and X marks the spot where the real GCSEs and vocational papers will start. So it's important that we gear ourselves up and we start to ramp things up for that home stretch in order to support the children to do the very best that they possibly can and reach their potential when they get to those exams next summer. So here's what we've got in store for them. Things are as normal after they've come back. They've obviously just done a set of exams. So they'll be looking at their results in those papers with their teachers and going over those and looking at maybe some of their strengths and areas for development. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I talk about preparing for exams. But it is important that the pupils pay very, very close attention to the topics that they've done particularly well on in those mocks and the ones where there's room for improvement, and that they focus their efforts there. Elevate, hopefully a number of you have engaged with some of the Elevate material by now. We had the parents presentation at the start of the year. I regularly tweet and send home information about their webinars, which I'll talk more about later. But it's a partnership that's been really fruitful for the school with regards to developing the study skills within the student body, and in order them to help themselves to be resourceful and focus on developing their own learning and really empowering them across the curriculum to be able to get the most out of the efforts that they can put in. And that is sort of splits up as we go through the next year, rounds of mock examinations where they get an opportunity to test all the knowledge, skills and understanding that they've learned in lessons, really see and get a diagnostic back from their teachers about where they are, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. So we've got an Elevate session which is coming up this summer, which is called Ace Your Exams, which will help them with some strategies for how to prepare for their mocks in the summer. Then when we come back in September, we've got another Elevate session, which is called Study Sensei, which helps them with ongoing study skills and how to use note-taking in order to develop their understanding and help them to prepare for those mocks that are next December. And then when they come back, there's another Elevate session, which is called Finishing Line. And then that helps them understand how to really use that final set of mocks to focus their work on the very last key points of the specifications that they're studying in order to get the maximum benefit out of the short amount of time they've got left. And then there's a final practice in March of their year 11, which will give them a set of, again, diagnostic information that tells them where their strengths and weaknesses are so that they can revise really fruitfully in preparation for those real exams. They get lots and lots of practice on exam technique, supported with the study skills from Elevate and the key information about their areas of strength and weakness from their teachers. And that really makes up the program of how we will help them train themselves in order to be as successful as they possibly can when they reach their GCSE exams. Also built into their timetable, we have targeted academic support program. So every time we do a round of mocks, we look at all the data and we have some really targeted small group sessions that take place in Reach for a Book time, some Reach times, and elective time, where they will be pulled out, and they'll have a teacher give them their attention on the key areas, the key topics that they are struggling with a small group of their peers who are also struggling with similar material, in order to help them to do better. And there's a tiered approach to that as well. So there's different levels of support groups that they might be chosen to go into to get extra support in individual subjects. But the key here is that from now, every single lesson counts, and the amount of effort and the amount of work that they do in those lessons, the attention that they pay to their teachers in the material that's being delivered to them, and the work that they do at home to supplement the work that they do in school is massively key to their success. And everything that we set them has a purpose and is based on delivering them towards reaching their potential when they sit their final GCSEs. So everything is based on trying to combat this forgetting curve. And I think it makes common sense, really, that when we learn something, if someone tells us a piece of information, if we ask them instantly what that piece of information was, they're likely to understand, and they're likely to have remembered almost 100% of that information, if not all of that information. But if we don't revisit it and we just let it go, then the likelihood is that over time we will forget it and we won't be able to remember that piece of information. And actually, if we leave it a long period of time without revisiting that piece of information, we'll have forgotten it altogether. And you might ask someone a question a week later, a month later, a year later, of something that they could very quickly remember at the end of a particular lesson when they were taught it, but they now have no recollection of that experience at all, and no recollection of that knowledge that they once had or appeared to have. So that's a fairly standard curve of forgetting, and it's normal for all of us to not remember everything that we experience on a day-to-day basis. So here's what we will try to do, and here's what the pupils need to try to do to combat that forgetting curve. So when you're first taught something, you forget it very, very quickly. If it's not committed to your long-term memory, then, and it's not relevant to you, and it's not made relevant to you, it can be out of your mind within 3 days. It can probably be out of your mind within 3 hours if it's something that you're really not that keen on. But by revisiting it over a period of time and spacing that period of time out, so the example here is after a day, and then again after 3 days, and then again after 6 days, but they could easily be weeks or they could be months. The more you revisit that piece of information, the less likely you are to forget it, and the longer it will take you to forget it. Now, that's obviously key for pupils studying towards their GCSEs and their vocational qualifications, because there's information that they learn over the course of 2.5 years that they are then examined on at the end of year 11. And if you try to remember something that you were taught right back at the start of year 10 at the end of year 11, then the likelihood is you're going to find it very difficult to remember. So that is why this constant revision is really, really important, and this constant study and the study skills that we've been working on with the pupils are really key in helping them to remember and commit to long-term memory all the knowledge and skills that they need from their lessons. And we practice this in our lessons with do now tasks at the start of each lesson that will focus back on to previous learning that's been done maybe a week ago, maybe a month ago, maybe a year ago, and gets them to revisit that knowledge. But it's important that they're doing more of that at home as well, and they are studying around the subjects that they are learning. So here's the tools that they can use to do that. So when they get the idea of committing themselves in order to revisit that prior knowledge, it's important that they think about the things that they have found more difficult. It's very easy for all of us to look at things that we're very confident in, go back, go over those, and think that we're doing a really, really good job because we know all the information, and we may well go out feeling very, very confident. But if we don't tackle the areas that are very clearly places that we need to develop, where we have less knowledge, then those will obviously not change. And if you keep doing the same thing, you'll always get the same result. Alongside the mocks I talked about earlier, there's lots of low stakes testing that goes on in lessons that really clearly identifies parts of topics and whole topics where pupils need to do a little bit more work. And we have some fantastic tools available to the pupils with their Chromebooks in order to be able to do that. Google Classroom has all the lessons on, so they can always go back to the original lesson that they were taught if they want to work on something that they've subsequently found more difficult to remember. Hegarty Maths, Seneca Learning and Quizlet are other programs that are easily accessible online where they can practice previous content that they've learned, and they can access anything from the courses that they've been studying, and not just the things that they're learning today. And actually, in many ways, it's more important that they go back and look at things that they've done in the past. If there are any other specific tools that they need to use or things that they would prefer to use, then the best place to start for that is for them to speak to their teacher and say, what can I do to try and help me with this topic? And the teachers will be very forthcoming in giving them things that they can do in order to develop their learning, develop their understanding. You can also link your emails to Google Classroom and receive homework updates. Gmail is the best for that and provides the most usability, but other email accounts can be linked as well. But it is definitely worthwhile setting up a Gmail account if you don't have one already, and asking us to link that to Google Classroom, and then you will be able to get updates on what homework they should be doing. And obviously, increasingly, as they work through year 10 and into year 11, many of those homeworks will be about studying things that they did a period of time ago to help try and prevent that forgetting curve and help them to remember that key information. So how should they be revising when they're working at home? So you've overcome those kind of barriers of actually getting them to buy into the idea of doing it and overcoming the forgetting curve. But what is it that they are actually going to do, and how can you help them in order to do that? Well, the first thing is to make sure that they've got a really, really good environment to work in. It needs to be quiet, it needs to be well lit, and it needs to be free from distractions. Having the telly on in the background, having their phone nearby is not going to help them to focus on what they need to focus on. So try and make sure that there's no distractions around them when they're working, and they've got a good space to work in, maybe away from other people in the family, but in the right environment. Do they have something to revise from? So are they revising from an old lesson on Google Classroom or a textbook or notes that they've taken, or are they retrieving something from their memory? Are they revising from nothing, just trying to remember what they know? And either type of revision is really, really powerful, but there are different strategies that they should use. So if they are revising from something, then they can look at that piece of material, try and paraphrase it, make flashcards with bullet points of information on it, maybe write their own questions on one side, try and remember and write the answers on the back. They can read the piece of information, then cover it, and then copy it out. They shouldn't just be copying straight from one piece of information to another piece of information. It won't really help their brain to switch on. They won't really be using their brain to process that information. And essentially, they'll be practicing their handwriting, but they won't be getting any real gain from that. But they could read what the information is, then put that to one side, and then try and see how much they can remember immediately after having read it. If they come up with questions, so they've got the answer, they've got the material in front of them, maybe think of a list of questions that they would like to be able to answer, and then perhaps move the material away and go back and try and answer the questions that they've designed, or to elaborate on the material that they've got. Think about what other topics it links to, what topics prepared them to be able to do that, and what topics is it that they maybe went on to after that they used those skills for. By doing those things and linking the ideas together, it helps them to build their kind of knowledge network of how things work together, and different topics and strengths in other topics can help them with topics that they're learning today. If they're retrieving things from memory, they should firstly reflect and write and see how much of the topic they can remember. And it might be that they use some mnemonics to help them to remember key information, but it is really a case of sort of brain dumping everything that they know about a particular topic, and then they can maybe go and access some of the old material that they've used, or a textbook or a revision guide or information online, and see how much they did retain, and look at the pieces that they missed and try and remember those next time. But the other thing is revision is it uses a lot of energy, it uses a lot of brain power, so they should try and do it in small chunks. So after they've been doing maybe 25 minutes, it's fine for them to have a break, and then get back to it. It might be that that's only a 5-10 minute break, and then they get back to it. But it is also okay for them to do things that are their enjoyable pastimes as well. And it's okay for them to put in things like football training and other hobbies and pastimes that they might have, in order to make sure that those key things that are important for their enjoyment and their relaxation are in first, and they don't conflict with times when they're going to be revising, and they don't conflict with for you at home with them wanting to go and do one thing when you would maybe quite like them to sit down and do some revision. So you can get those in, and then if they stick to a revision timetable and they can say to you, well, I did my maths revision on Monday evening, I'm going to play football on Tuesday evening, for example, then that's absolutely fine. And by having those boundaries and having those structured times and routines, then that will really, really help for them to be successful in the long run. Here's a way that we can help with that. We've got a partnership with Elevate, which I have talked about earlier in this presentation, and there is loads and loads of support for pupils and for parents on their website. So you can go on there. There's the student portal. The password for that is Rondo, RONDO, all lowercase. When you log onto the website, it will just pop up and ask you to put that in, and then it will give you full access. There's study tips on there, exam questions, videos, blogs about people's experiences and how they've been able to be really successful, books and planners that you can access through there, and you can use things like model revision timetables that will really help balance the enjoyment aspect and the relaxation aspect of the life of a teenager alongside the importance of studying and being successful. There's support for parents as well, parent guidebooks on what's been successful in supporting children through exams at GCSE and at A-level, resources for you to use with your children in order to help you to help them, FAQs from previous parent webinars, and the Elevate have built up over a period of time. So questions that you may well have, you may well be able to find the answer there, because there's no such thing as a silly question, and I'm sure they've all been asked and possibly answered before as well. And if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us here either, and we will support you in any way that we can. They also run free parent webinars, to our parents because of this partnership, and you can sign up for those. They are about once every month, but when you register, you will also get access to their newsletter, and when they bring out any new webinars or ones that you can join live, where you can ask questions to presenters as well, you'll be able to be regularly updated on those. The next one is on Tuesday the 8th of February at 6 p.m, and it's on time management, and it is about exactly one of those things that I've just been talking about, which is about how to avoid conflict at home and make sure that young people are spending enough time studying but still getting the opportunity to engage with their pastimes as well. And all of these links you can click on if you use the slides version of the presentation rather than the video. So if you've got any questions, please fill out the Google form and we will get back to you and give us some feedback on this presentation. I hope that it's been really, really useful to you. And as the programme with Elevate progresses, you'll see a massive improvement in your child's study skills, and you and we can help them along the way towards being really successful with their GCSEs when they get there next summer. Thanks very much for watching.